Welcome to the Zakariya Frank Show. My goal is to help you live a healthier, more informed, and all-around better life. To do that, I'm exploring essential topics with industry experts and bringing you all sorts of helpful information. We're talking physical health, mental and emotional well-being, spirituality, relationships, philosophy, and more. Unafraid of any topic and unapologetic about the truth. If you like no-nonsense, deep and meaningful conversations, you're in the right place. There's plenty to talk about, so let's get to today's episode. I have a very interesting guest with me here today. After facing much of her own trauma and chronic pains, she's now become a holistic trauma resolution practitioner, certified in Reiki, somatics, somatic activated healing, hearts work, nervous system regulation, trauma releasing body work, and human design. She believes that every human on earth could be fed, clothed, and hugged. She helps humans live from their hearts, not their wounds, and the core pillars of her work are safety, connection, and fulfillment. And that's Meridyth Driskill. Meridyth, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you here. Very excited. This is actually a first session back from a little hiatus of recording as I was transitioning to computers. So very special one. But let's get started with learning a little bit about Meridyth and where you come from and what brought you into the work of trauma and trauma healing and the type of work that you do. What's your kind of background that led you here?
That led me into this work?
Yeah.
Surprise, it's trauma. I had a rough go of things physically when I was younger. Family stuff aside, and you'll probably hear me say a lot, that trauma is not just what happens to you, but what doesn't happen. And so my childhood was a lot of what didn't happen. It was a lot of the subtle trauma and parentification, things like that. I raised my 3 siblings because my parents were busy at work, that sort of thing. Like, I didn't exist unless I was hurt or bad. So guess what I was a lot? Hurt and bad. So in keeping with the hurt theme, when I was 15, I was diagnosed with degenerative disc disease. When I was 16, 2 herniated discs. When I was 17, I was hit by a semi-truck. And when I was 19, I had a back surgery. And it wasn't until I was 29 that I was pain-free. And so for a large portion of my life, I was in chronic pain. There were so many days that I couldn't walk, that I couldn't function. That was a large part of that. There was also sexual assault. There was my own poor decision-making when it came to how I was coping with the physical and the emotional pain that I was experiencing. So lots of alcohol, drugs at one point. I lost a $6 million investment into my first business. That was earth-shattering. I got pregnant when I was not supposed to be able to have children. My partner and I were both supposed to be infertile, and now we have a beautiful 7-year-old upstairs. But that was really earth-shattering for my identity. And that happened right after the investment into my business fell through. So it was a really, really, really tumultuous period. I was in chronic pain. I had extreme anxiety, and that I feel like comes with pain a lot when you are hurting and you're like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to function. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to work today. I don't know if how am I going to pay my bills? You know, there's a lot of pain or a lot of anxiety and depression that can come along with pain that I don't think we talk about very often. We just throw painkillers at it and force through, right? That's what we're conditioned to do in our society. And so that was it was a year after my son was born that I really hit rock bottom. And I got into this work ultimately because I had to. It was heal or die. And I knew that. And I got really, really sick one night. I started vomiting. Like, I was so ill. And I knew that I was purging negativity from my body. I just had this knowing, like, you know, those chronic one-uppers who, like, you won the race, they won it by more seconds. Like, I was the opposite of that. I was a chronic one downer. So, like, you had a bad day, I had a bad day, and my dog got hit by a bus. Like, it was I was not pleasant to be around at all. And so I got sick this day. Like, I realized while I'm sick, like, I've been living the definition of insanity. I have been wanting and desperate for something different, and I haven't done a single thing different to participate in creating something different. And that's bananas. So as soon as I was able to, I pulled out my laptop and I just started looking up the most successful people in the world and their habits. And they all had two things in common: self-care, because they were their number one asset, and they all had a mindset practice. And so I said, I'm starting here. And it just so happened to be right before New Year's. And so I was like, that's it. Like, these are my New Year's resolutions. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to start like a self-care practice. I'm going to start swapping out some of the coping mechanisms and coping mechanisms that most people genuinely will call self-care to this day.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of that. It's a slippery little thing, the self-care. We can use it as a cop-out a lot. But I was like, okay, I'm going to switch out these unhealthy coping mechanisms, and I'm going to insert genuine self-care, and I'm going to get to know myself. Ultimately, like, that's what it was. It was like, I'm going to take this time and I'm going to get to know myself, and I'm going to have the courage to look at myself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and face it. I'm going to face it. And then if it's something that I don't align with, I'm going to do something about it. And I did a lot of healing work. And along the way, I mean, like, within 4 months, my entire life was completely different. Completely. I'm like, job, car, relationships, my physical body. I could walk. I could stand. I stood up straight for the first time in 15 years. And I was like, well, there's really something to this. And so I've spent the last 7.5 years going down that rabbit hole of finding the best modalities to create sustainable healing. And I believe that in order for healing to be sustainable, for transformation to be sustainable, we have to look at the entire human. We have to look at the mind. We have to look at the body, the nervous system, the spirit, the heart. It's all of it. We're not just a head. We're not just a body. We're all of these systems comprised within our organism. And so we have to look at all of it. And so I've found the best modalities that I could find that allowed other people to experience this, because I experienced incredibly deep and dark places and pain. And I was like, I know there are other people suffering on this planet. And if I can help them, if I helped me, like, if I could heal, then I think it's possible for anyone. And so I want to help as many of those people as possible.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. There is so much to unpack, so many notes I took, and everything that you just said. There's a lot of very interesting things that you just said. But right at the tail end there, you said the phrase, help someone heal. What does that even mean, right? Because that can mean different things to different people. A lot of people, I think, often use that phrase even, but perhaps still have a lot of healing to go. And that kind of ends up also being a bit of a cop-out as well, saying, oh, I'm healed because I run around and I think I'm okay. Meanwhile, I don't realize I'm manifesting all these unconscious behaviors because of X, Y, and Z, perhaps, that I experienced. So what does that mean to you to even heal? What qualifies that?
Well, first of all, I want to say I will never, ever, if you ever hear me say that I am fully healed, you have my permission to take me out back and jerk a knot in my tail, because we're all works in progress. We are all always works in progress, and healing is not a linear journey. It's this cyclical, think of like a tornado, and it goes like this. And so for me, my healing, it looks like, felt that. It looks like I am not looking forward to going to sleep from the moment I wake up. It means that I'm not looking to alter my consciousness. I'm not looking to escape. I'm not looking to get it all over with so I can go back to bed so that I can be out of my misery temporarily. It looks like I know how to feel my emotions, and so I'm not afraid of them, and I'm also not ruled by them. It means that I can have hard conversations with people like an adult. It means that I can set boundaries, and I'm not perfect at this, especially like the boundary setting, because I love little heart. I just love to give. But like, I am learning how to set better boundaries for myself. Ultimately, it means that I actually genuinely can sit here and say that I love myself. Even though I'm not a finished product, even though I'm not perfect, even though I still have things to work on and things that areas I can grow in, and places that I would like to take deeper responsibility, that I genuinely love myself. I don't dread my existence or dread going through my day. I get to experience, I have connection and fulfillment and safety in my life. And I don't sabotage those things.
That's a beautiful definition. So to put it very basically, it's like simultaneously loving oneself, but also working on oneself in a positive direction. And I think if either of those are missing, then it isn't true healing and it isn't true self-love. It takes the active, I understand why I am where I am, but also I strive to be better as always, because there is always a better place that we can be, and kind of appreciating the journey along the way, not beating ourselves up for not being better yet, but also properly lighting the fire under our own butts to do a little better each day. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's a great way to look at it. And so you touched on a really, really interesting topic right at the beginning of what you said in your background, in that trauma is often what doesn't happen, not just what does happen. And I want to spend some time talking about that, because it's actually very huge and it's actually very overlooked. And I think it's easier to pinpoint when something did happen that's traumatic, but it's harder to pinpoint when something didn't. It's the negative, the void, the lack. It's harder to kind of describe sometimes. It's harder to recognize as a thing. But all things have their equal and opposite. So as much as something being done can be impactful, something that's necessary not being done can absolutely be impactful as well. Why do you think that side of trauma is far less, if ever, talked about?
Because I think that people have been conditioned to gaslight themselves out of thinking that other people's behavior is bad or wrong. In our society, as long as we keep going and keep producing at all costs, then all's well. And so it doesn't behoove our society, our capitalistic, patriarchal society, for people to sit down and really reflect on their childhood and reflect on how they might emotionally be impacted by things that didn't happen, by the times that they didn't feel loved and supported, by the times that they weren't connected to a caregiver. And also there's this really interesting dynamic in childhood when we're developing, where if you are my caretaker, hypothetically, and I'm your child, and you're not doing something that I need to take care of me, then in my child brain, where without you, I'm alone in the world, right? I'm alone to fend for myself, and the world is a very large and uncertain place. So that is destabilizing for a developing mind. So if you're my caregiver and you're neglecting me in some way, then either you're wrong and bad, or I'm wrong and bad. Or there's something coming in between us that's wrong or bad. In most cases, it's just the first two when you're in childhood and it's just the caregiver situation, right? So if I'm wrong and bad, that actually makes the world a safer place. Because if you're my caregiver and you're bad and you're wrong, then I can't trust you. Then I am still inherently alone in this world, which is incredibly frightening. It's a terrifying concept to a 6-year-old. Yeah. So this is the formation of shame. This is where shame begins. And shame, I have found in my work, is still one of the absolute stickiest things that people do not like to talk about, even though it is the most universal thing. And so there's so much shame around talking about these experiences in childhood where someone felt neglected, where they felt like they weren't loved, where they felt like they weren't seen, heard, held when they needed it, when they needed connection. And then there's this fear of like, I'll be weak if I say that not getting love hurt me. I'll be one of those snowflakes.
Yeah, people are so people love to be extreme, right? In the different, it has to be all of it or none of it. We have people that very often ruminate in trauma and just make that their whole identity and their label, and then in all sorts of different directions start to excuse all of their behavior because, oh, well, this happened to me. And then there's the people on the other side that just deny, and like you said, they can't admit that anything happened because then, you know, they don't want to be lumped in with the other people. But I want to back up a little bit because you threw out a couple buzzwords, right? That a lot of people do throw out, especially in the world of healing and looking at things that aren't quite right in the individual level within society. Is the way that the world is operating and the way that people are getting traumatized an inherent function of capitalism and patriarchy? Or is it just an iteration that we're seeing very currently being implemented?
I think it's undeniable. I will say that. It's interesting because I've thought about this from like an anthropological perspective, and trauma is unavoidable, right? To be human is to experience trauma. Even if we were still like in a tribal community, like if that was our societal structure, you're still going to stub your toe. You're still going to get like chased by an apex predator. You're still going to like accidentally fall on your own sword. You know what I mean? Like there's always going to be trauma. Your best friend's going to probably still like betray you or talk smack at some point. Like these things are human, right? What I see influenced in the trauma sphere by capitalism is the push for humans to be productive, for not taking into consideration proper life balance, right? Your work-life balance. It's way askew. We have a lot of people who live in whose jobs require and demand them to perform at incredibly high standards for incredibly long periods of time. And a lot of those jobs, I'm not talking about our surgeons, right? I'm talking about people in sales, where they're pushed really hard to hit sales quotas. And it's like just for somebody else to get richer. And there's nothing wrong with wealth. There's nothing wrong with these things happening. But it's like, when we value the profits over people, that's where I take issue. And that's where I see our society largely impacted by our decisions. This is where profits are more important than protecting the planet. Profits are more important than spending time with family. So now we have like generations of children that aren't getting to spend time with their parents because they're so busy chasing sales quotas for somebody else's pocketbook, right? I think that we have an entire multitude of industries that profit and benefit from us being disconnected from ourselves and from others. I mean, gambling, alcohol, shopping, pharmaceuticals. We have all of these industries that benefit from us being disconnected from just normal human cycles. Like we're supposed to be outside. We're supposed to see the sun.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to wear plastic shoes and sit at a desk for 8-10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and not engage with our families, not engage with our own inner worlds, not eat a healthy, balanced diet, not move our bodies. And the way that society is set up, most of those things are absolutely normal. But what is normal is not what is common is not what's normal. And we have replaced common with normal. And so many of those things are because of how and what our society values and promotes.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a difficult one to inherently wrap words around. And I agree with you 100% that the world and the corporate based societies are not at all natural, and they are in fact very artificial and not set up with us in mind. But perhaps the way that the economy is set up and the way that the world is set up in those ways are the apex predators of today that inherently are going to be out there. So we need to do what we can do to navigate this world full of predators and still thrive within it, right? Look at us. I have these walls around me. I'm not worried about, a lion coming and getting me. I'm not worried about where my next meal's coming from, right? We have these things that we have adapted to alleviate some issues. But just like you said, there's always going to be some. Mm-hmm. Does it mean that the whole thing is bad, or does it mean that, look, that's the way the world is now? And you got to look out, just like you had to look out for other things previously, and then perhaps it's those that are able to take place or take part in these structures while also finding the way to do that inner healing, to then have that inner healed guiding force to navigate the world around them, that are the ones that are winning.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to say it. And I want to be clear that I don't think that capitalism is all bad. In fact, I do my best not to look at things through the lens of duality. Not always. I'm not perfect. So I don't view capitalism as a good or bad thing, but what I do see is an imbalance. So
is it the fault of the system, or is it people's individual failures to thrive?
Both. I think both, for sure. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I have all the answers, but from a trauma-informed lens, these are the things that I see affecting us and perpetuating trauma. So, I think there's been a mass exodus from the corporate world. I think we've seen more entrepreneurs than, I don't know about you, but after we went back to work after COVID, I heard all the time, where have all the workers gone? Where have all the workers gone? Where have all the workers gone? And it's like, well, they were unfulfilled and they had some time to sit with themselves and they realized it. So a lot of them went and found other ways to make money. A lot of them started businesses. People are, I think, starting to see that the corporate dream or the American dream that they were sold, the work hard, do well, go to college, get a job, buy a house, have kids, retire, and then enjoy your life. People are starting to realize that that's not working and that doesn't feel good for most people.
Yeah.
And there's just an imbalance in work versus the survival portion of life versus the opportunities to thrive. So it's not all bad. It's not good, bad, right, wrong. I see imbalance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And let's touch on the other kind of buzzword that got thrown out earlier. You said patriarchy, right? And that kind of got lumped in with capitalism in regards to what is perhaps perpetuating unhealthiness or trauma upon the society. And when I hear patriarchy, despite perhaps what a lot of people's perception of it is, I hear the natural order of things that is the most protective and allowing for healing and allowing for a good environment for all people, men, women, and children alike. To me, patriarchy is just a natural hierarchy and just, men are here, women are here. To me, patriarchy means men are doing what we got to do to take care of the women, to take care of the children. That doesn't necessarily have to be in an oppressive way. And I think a lot of people have this concept that patriarchy is fundamentally only beneficial to men instead of being beneficial in a healthy iteration for all involved. And I think another interesting thing is that in modern society, while we're often talking about the patriarchy, I think at a familial level and a household level, and even a societal level at large, there's a lot of matriarchy going on. A lot of women who are the heads of the household, who are the decision makers, who are the more competent individual, even within a family, who are, there's certain laws and structures that do benefit women that men don't get and don't see. And that often gets left out of the questions or out of the equation. So I'm curious what originally brought the word patriarchy to your head when you were thinking about things that are kind of unhealthy in society.
Imbalance. Because as you said, in the proper order of things, the men are the top of the totem pole, and they ensure and look out for all of the well-being for all of the women and the children on the planet. But that's not happened, has it?
No.
There are women and children that are actively being bombed right now because it profits someone. So that to me is not working. Yeah. That to me is not men living from their hearts with the best interests of all living humans on the planet. That doesn't work.
Yeah. The reason I bring it up because is for the sake of uniting us all, right? Because when we use these phrases like patriarchy and such, it's as a man, it's very it's hurtful. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go cry about it, but it's like, I'm out here wanting to do well by the people of society, and now we're getting told if we want to be in charge at all in any direction, then it's a bad thing, right? And so that's why I'll always push back and encourage people to say, it's not men doing these things. It's a handful of men in a dark room somewhere over there who are inflicting these evil things upon society. The average everyday man, although they probably have a lot of healing to do on their own, don't want these things. And they're suffering just as much, if not more, than the women and children being subjected to all this garbage, right? And so, we don't have to harp on that. It's just a fun thing to push back on, because let's remember we're in this together. And
do you want to tell me more about why it hurts you to hear that?
Yeah, and it's not, well, because I'm a man, right? And we live in 2024 where we've seen a perpetuation of the demonization of men and all things masculine and all things manhood, right? It's the silent suffering that men do. Women can talk about how they feel unsafe when they're walking down the road and, there's a man over there and they don't know if he's going to attack me. And that's valid. But what doesn't get heard is the other side of that. And what it feels like to be a man walking down the road, and you genuinely mean no harm. You genuinely have the best of intentions. You would never, ever do anything to hurt someone unless they needed to be hurt because they inflicted violence upon you or your family to begin with. But it doesn't get talked about what it feels like to be viewed as a predator and be viewed as dangerous and bad and inherently evil by default. And that's just one example, right? It's a weird thing. It's like, here you are. You don't mean bad. In fact, you only want to help people. And now you get viewed at as a default as bad. And that's one example of walking down the street, but it's kind of highlights how we only hear one side of the unpleasantry that's been created in the dynamic of society with everyone feeling unsafe. And then obviously, there's the media and all the common things, you walk around and how often you hear some woman say, oh, I hate men, or I hate men. And again, it's not about these things being inherently like, oh yeah, I can't stand, that hurts me on a personal level to hear that. But the normalization of men bad, it's just shitty. It's just shitty as a man, Yeah. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I feel that. And I have this conversation with my partner a lot, who is a man. And I want to be really clear that when I use words like capitalism or patriarchy, again, I try to view things through the lens of non-duality. So not looking at things as good, bad, right, or wrong. But I want to be very clear when I say that I love men. I love men, and men out here are hurting. because of the stuff that you just mentioned. And there's a lot of the I hate men thing. You will never, ever hear me say I hate men, ever. I love men and I love women and I love humans. I love people. And I have a lot of things to say about the polarity world. And I have done a lot of personal experimentation in our own household with who makes the money and who stays at home. And we've done it all the ways. And now I am like clamoring to, and the feminists are going to roast me for this, and that's fine. I'm clamoring to be like, you go make the money. I want to be at home barefoot with my child and my garden and my books. And I still want to run my business. I still want to help people with my work. I still want to work, but I do not want to be the primary breadwinner. I don't, and the iterations of me that were for that were the iterations of me that were wounded and that my ego needed to prove something.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to be really clear when I say that this is not about hating men. And I honestly, in listening to what you were saying, it's like, I don't even know that this is technically a patriarchy. If we were up against anything, it's not men. It's like this corporate, it's the elites, right? Like, I don't want to sound too much like, I don't care how I sound actually. Like, if I sound like a conspiracy theorist, so be it. But like, it's not men. It's like these elites and these corporations, and the fact that we're willing to pillage our environment, destroy our planet, kill people, innocent people, so that weapons manufacturers can make money.
Yeah.
So that someone else can say, I have more land than you. Like, it's not about men, it's about corruption. And what I am referring to when I say patriarchy, what I feel in me is the balance of the masculine and the feminine energies on this planet. And do you know much about the masculine and the feminine energies?
Yes.
Okay. So ultimately, I'm saying that we just need some more of the feminine back, because the shadow masculine, the wounded masculine, is the aggressive, right? Not defending, but attacking. So I'm saying that like what we have on a global scale is a lot of shadow masculine, where we need the healed masculine. And we need more of the feminine, where we can trust and know that we have enough, that we have enough resources for everyone, and that we can actually love and take care of everyone, that we're going to be okay. We're good. We've got enough resources. We don't have to keep pushing, mining, manufacturing, that maybe slowing down and living our life by the seasons and by our natural human rhythms in harmony with one another is what we need more of. So I'm not saying that men are bad. I would never say that. I'm saying that we need more of the feminine, more of the mama nurturing energy on earth in our society. And we need more of the healed masculine. And again, that's no fault of any one person's. If I had to point fingers at anybody, it would be Rockefeller. But
yeah, there's a handful of names that we know, and certainly ones that we don't, that have been involved in shaping the world as we see it. But yeah, I always like to have these conversations, because with the best of intentions, we can be fighting amongst ourselves, unfortunately, when we don't have to, right? It's not men versus women. It doesn't matter to me if we need more of this one or more of that one. We need more of both in the healed direction,
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll always put the initiation on men, because women can only respond to the environment that men create or allow to be created. Only through healed masculine energy creating an environment that is safe and healthy can healed feminine energy really thrive and come to fruition. And then, of course, that results in healthy children for the next generation. And, far beyond men versus women, we have good versus evil, and we have humanitarians and people that are for humanity versus people that aren't, and are very outright against humanity. And, their actions certainly show their cards in that way, and their words themselves even show their intentions behind their actions. It's pretty crazy world, But awesome. Thank you for going on that trip with me, because I wasn't at all like offended or upset with you, to be very clear. It's just I like to highlight these phrases that are so easy to use that perhaps there's better language or healthier language to use around the message,
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to go deeper into what I meant and to hear my heart, because the heart is what I'm talking about. Like, we could have a really long conversation just about this, because I have a lot to say about it, about the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine, and the chicken and the egg, and then the women who are now like forced into masculine roles and who are still really clinging to those roles. I was one of them. I'm still working on coming out of my masculine and more into my feminine, and I went there because I felt like I didn't have a choice, and I was raised watching that exact same dynamic too. So it's like, well, if the women don't have a choice, then they have to go in that direction. So, and then the tendency is to blame the masculine. But then the men, these men have been failed, in my opinion. They were never, ever taught how to talk about or feel their emotions. And there's incredible pain being carried by men in the world. And they were never given tools. They never got the nurturing or the conversation. They were told to suck it up, be a man. And that's not how humans work. No matter if you're man or woman, that's not how humans work. Humans have emotions, and humans have to learn how to feel their emotions and relate to their emotions differently. And it is pivotal that it's done.
Yeah, for men, it's a little bit of both, right? Because this is one of those things where it's easy to go extreme in either of those directions, and both of those are unhealthy. I think for a man, you gotta get through it. You can't act on your emotions. You can feel them, learn how to process them, figure out the lessons, but you do have to move forward because things have to get done, right? And it's easy to get kind of lost in either side of those. And I don't think either side of those are productive for men. I think, in fact, the push for men to process and feel their emotions to a deep level and act on them, such as, women and children do, is responsible for a lot of the calamity in society, because that's inherently against our wiring, and that doesn't make us feel better either. And then it kind of creates cycles. So there's a bit of both that has to get done. The demonization of, hey, you got to suck it up and be a man, isn't healthy either, because sometimes that's the right answer too. You see what I'm saying? There's a bit of both.
I see what you're saying, but I see where saying that to a 6-year-old boy is not healthy.
If that 6-year-old boy's father figure isn't embodying what he's trying to say. We learn by example, right? And that's where the young men have been failed, truly. It doesn't matter what words you're telling to a young boy to tell them what to do and what's the healthiest thing to do. You could give them all the right instructions. We need to see it. Mm-hmm. That's where the failure has come in. The lack of father figures and healthy father figures and healthy masculine figures, and only being presented with feminine men, and only being presented with weak men, and only being presented with unhealed men.
Or absent. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
That's the problem. It's not a matter of what we're telling them. It's what are we showing our young boys? And this goes on all levels. It's the individual level of how a lot of fathers have failed to heal themselves and then raise their children properly, or just, gone altogether and don't show up as a good example, or even right. Sometimes it's worse if they're even right there, but are just a terrible example of what it means to be a man. That could be the most damaging of them all. And then there's the larger scale levels, the corporate level, right? Where we have all these feminine men being pushed in the media. We have the destruction of any true masculine role models in society, the lack of the superheroes. And then, not that I'm like a superhero person, but you know what I'm saying? The male role models and guiding figures, the beacons of masculinity, have been taken away at all levels. That's what the young men are being failed with. It's not about telling them to process their emotions. It's about showing them what it means to be a man.
And I think that largely from a societal perspective, there's a really, what's the word I'm looking for? Distorted idea of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And I feel that I know what you are alluding to, and I feel connected to what you're saying in this conversation. And again, I'm not making anyone good, bad, right, or wrong.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, though, to loop back really quickly when you're talking to children and emotions and actually adults and emotions, you were like, well, this can be good, but going too far the other way can be bad. Like, we're supposed to feel our emotions, but not act on them. I'm not for anyone acting on their emotions all of the time. Like, I am not for me acting on my emotions. Do you know how many people's desks I would have shit on? Like, if I acted on my emotions, I can be unhinged sometimes. Like, I can be a little rage monster, and I can also be a sad little sack. I don't want to act on my emotions. I want to feel them. I want to be present with them. I want to get the lesson that they are teaching me. Like, ooh, you had a boundary that was compromised. You need to stand up for yourself. That is why you feel angry. Great. Thank you so much. Now I take that information and I go into the world, and like an open-hearted, centered adult, I have those conversations that are necessary to reinstate and reinforce a boundary. I don't go running out punching people in the face because they crossed a boundary.
Of course.
So I don't think man and woman, girl, boy, that to me does not matter in the emotional processing. For me, it is, as humans, we have to learn how to feel our emotions, how to relate to them differently, because I see people relate to them in one of two ways. We either shove them down and completely suppress them and employ lots of coping mechanisms to numb, or we're completely ruled by our emotions and we only do what our emotions dictate. Yeah. Neither of those are the answer. But like I described, learning how to sit with yourself and say, oh, I'm feeling something. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling this in my body? And then moving that emotion in a healthy way for a healthy amount of time, because you can absolutely get sucked into things. You have to know, like, I'm indulging here. I'm perpetuating this, right? So you let it flow, you let it go, you take the juice from the squeeze, and you move forward wiser, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. To be very clear, my advocation before was not that, women should or do inherently in a healthy way only ever operate out of their emotions. I was saying that I think the bar is placed a little differently for where is the healthiest for the use of emotions as a guiding force for the different groups. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. Awesome. So you said another very interesting thing that I want to dissect, and we'll spend some time on this. In regards to trauma, you were talking about your experiences and what resulted within you, and then what happened around you as a result of what happened within you. And you said the phrase, my own poor decision making as a result of trauma. Now, that's a very powerful and empowered and responsibility taking phrase right there that I do commend you for, because a lot of people are unable to have that perspective. A lot of people are unable to have that frame that, yes, my trauma resulted in me having certain mental procedures and certain thoughts and certain feelings, and then I did a certain thing as a result of those certain procedures, but I still did that thing. That was me. That was my own decision, and that was a poor decision. That's a difficult thing for people to accept. And a lot of people go the direction of, I did that because trauma. I did that because they did that to me. So I want to take a second. Let's dissect what helped you arrive at that responsibility or that owning of your positioning of responsibility in your experience? How did you get there?
Being absolutely floored by the levels of victimhood that I had reached and being hell-bent on collapsing that cycle, because I was a gold medal victim. And I learned it very well from caregivers. And it was something that when I said I had to sit down and I was like, okay, I'm going to meet myself and I'm going to have the courage to look at it, good, bad, and ugly. Good, bad, now would be my languaging, right? And I'm going to face it. And if it's something that I'm not comfortable with, that doesn't meet my standards or my values, then I'm going to fix it. I'm going to not fix it. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to take responsibility for it. And the victimhood, ultimately, I had to realize no one's coming to save me. It doesn't matter how I got here. It doesn't matter who did what to me. No one is coming to apologize to me. No one is coming to offer me reparations. No one is coming to save me. No one's coming to do anything for me. It is my responsibility to get here. One of my favorite quotes is, "It's not your fault that you're fucked up, but it's your fault if you stay fucked up."
Yep. 100%.
Again, to be a human is to experience trauma. No one is walking around passing out like little, like, millions of dollars to be like, you know what, you just take it easy for your life because you had a hard one. It's not happening. It's not happening. And so many of us are like, well, I can't because of my trauma. Look, I absolutely understand that there are triggers and that there are emotions and that there are things that trauma makes life really hard to navigate around. Absolutely. And my compassion is massive for people who have a hard time navigating life because of trauma. And no one's ever going to come and just make your life easier and just give you a slip to, like, absolve you of having to keep going. And the thing is that life gets to be so beautiful. It gets to be so incredible and so amazing. And you're the one that's going to get you to that point. No one else. And that's actually why I don't identify with the word healer. I'm not a healer. I don't heal you. I don't want you coming to me, placing your power on me. I don't have the power to heal you. You have the power to heal you. Only you. I might be the guide that's correct for you. I might have tools to share with you that are correct for you on where you are in your journey, but I'm not healing you. And I don't want you to give me that power. I want you to find the power within you to do the hard work. It's not easy. It's not always fun. But the more you do it, the more life gets to be easy and fun.
Yeah. The flip side of taking responsibility for our own circumstances in life is understanding that we have the empowerment to change it and we have the ability to change it. If it is our fault in any capacity, not in a negative way, but if it's our doing, then we can be the ones who undo as much as we can as well. And you said a really interesting thing there in that you're not there to heal someone. You're just there to kind of perhaps be a point of reference, to be a guide, to be a messenger, a delivery avenue of whatever words people want to hear. Do you find it's the same types of things that people need to hear? Or is it more like a specific thing that you have to work with each person on? Is it overall themes that you end up working with everybody on, or is everything so unique, or is it a bit of both?
It's both. It's both. It's the same core human wounds. It's the same. So the core human wounds are fear of rejection, abandonment, betrayal, humiliation, and injustice. And then you've got your mother wound, your father wound, your witch wound. There's various wounds, right? It all pretty much boils down to traumatic experiences lead a person to manifest these wounds in different behaviors. but it usually comes down to the same. I mean, there's only so many emotions, and there's so many core wounds. So it's usually like, I tell people, the things that are the most personal are in fact the most universal. So shame is huge. Every single person that I work with, shame is in the mix, right? And I was working with someone yesterday, and it was fear of rejection. But I mean, those 5 core wounds, I see those in every session in some way. Then it's literally teaching people how to feel their emotions. So there's different systems, and I like to paint the picture of, like, think you have a peanut M&M, right? And like with a red peanut M&M, you have someone who is comfortable expressing anger. They're comfortable expressing boundaries, and oftentimes those boundaries can take the form of walls. But they're comfortable with saying no. They're comfortable with showing anger, frustration. And then on the inside, there's this peanut, and it's wrapped around. It's got this fight system, right? And there's vulnerability, and there's hurt, and there's grief on the inside. So it's literally working with the layers on the outside, the protective layers, because that anger is a protective mechanism. So it's working through those protective mechanisms so that we can be with the grief and the softness and the hurt parts on the inside that they're afraid to look at, that they're afraid to be with, that they're afraid to have anyone see. And then on the flip side, you have a blue M&M, and they're very comfortable showing their sadness. They're comfortable crying. They're more of like your freeze and your fawn systems. And on the inside is their rage. But they were conditioned that their anger and their rage is bad, probably because they never saw anyone own their anger. They only ever saw anger hurt people, or they were punished severely for being angry. And so the work with them is working with the soft and the sad parts, and letting them know that it's okay for that anger to exist, and then having them tap into that. And that's the medicine that they are going to benefit from. And it depends on the system. It's incredibly bio-individual, right? Like, I could have 2 people with headaches, and there's 2 different causes, but we can figure the cause out no matter what, like based on like psycho-emotional things, right? I'm not going to say no matter what. I try not to speak like in sweeping fashions, because there's, chemical, environmental, and psycho-emotional. So, but if someone has like recurring back pain, I've got 2 clients with recurring back pain, there's going to be general themes that we're going to look at that are usually going to answer why there's that back pain. But there is bio-individuality, and there's also very common themes. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I was expecting, a bit of both, right? There are the overall themes, but because we are unique kind of puzzles of perhaps the same pieces being put together a little differently, it can be a little different and unique in how exactly we unpack to get to that root, whatever that root is. And so we've introduced it, of course, the psychosomatics, the connection between our physical body and our emotional body. Let's, how do we even start to dive into that? What, I guess, kind of brought you to comprehend the deep connection between emotions and physical pain? How did you start learning about that?
I noticed that the more I did inner work, the less pain I experienced. And then I still have 2 incredible mentors, Cole and Ta Whitty, a husband and wife, who are incredible. And they were teaching this exclusively at the time, like interpreting the body's language. And I've known Cole for 16 years. And Ta, her husband, is a nurse. He was a nurse in New York City ER night shifts for like 25 years. And I have never met someone who knows more about the human body and their connection to the psycho-emotional pieces. And so I'm just very, very, very blessed that I've had them as mentors for the entire 7 years that I've been doing this. And so that definitely, because I knew Cole beforehand and, follow her on social media, I definitely like kind of came into this world with a little bit of that perspective being dropped in. And I was fascinated by it, especially when I noticed that my periods radically changed. I no longer was cramping at all. Bloat would go away. I could walk again. That was pretty impressive. That was pretty exciting. I could stand up straight. And so the more I used like this information in a self-study, the more I was like, this is bananas. It's absolutely bananas. And then like having clients go through and in somatic sessions, like they'll have said, I have this particular pain for months and months and months. And they say they've had it for years. And then they work through it. We do a somatic session, or they get the divorce and all of a sudden the pain goes away. It's like, they were related. But I hear these stories all the time from somatic practitioners where their clients come with pain. We go into the body, we feel emotions, and then the pain's gone. And it's the body does this thing. We're basically little turtles and we grow our own shells. And so any like muscle tension that you feel in your body, a lot of people, there's certain systems, I'll be like, are you clenching your butthole right now? And they're like, how did you know? But different systems hold tension in different areas of the body. And then there's, of course, the universal ones, the neck and shoulders, hips. But a lot of people aren't even aware that their hips are tight because all they do is sit at a desk. So when you have large emotions that are too big for you to process, your body stores it, right? Or when you don't have the tools, the skills, the know-how to process an emotion in a healthy way, the body stores it. And then that's where we start to form armoring, which is where you have the consistent and persistent muscular tension. So another thing that I know, if I have like a sore muscle and I work it, I do all the things, right? I do the tiger balm, I do my my therapy gun. I have a whole slew of, I call them torture devices, but like a right and like muscle tempering things. If I go through and I'm like, I treat the thing, or I go to the chiropractor, I get the adjustment, and it still keeps going, I know there's an emotional root to it.
Yep. Yeah, it's really not that hard to comprehend for those who are perhaps more material minded, right? Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed and moved around. It doesn't just go away. And we understand that emotional energy and emotional charges can be extremely powerful. We feel them. And our body has been equipped with these beautiful mechanisms to protect us, that if it recognizes, hey, our person can't deal with this right now, can't purge it out healthily or even unhealthily, purge it out, it'll tuck it away to protect us, to save us that suffering. But it can only do so much. It'll tuck it away and it'll tuck it away. And that can only happen for so long before you start to have those symptoms manifest. And especially if we have these chronic patterns of emotional unwellness, it's no surprise that we get chronic inflammation, we get chronic aches and pains and systems being unwell, or even it can go so deep as cancer. At beatcancer.org, the charity organization that I run, one of the key elements to our education system is teaching people the emotional correlates to certain types of cancer, the personality traits and emotional habits that have been scientifically observed to show statistically significant correlations with specific instances of cancer. It's on all levels recognized, not just in the modern world, but of course, of civilizations of the past for centuries. We have energy centers, we have chakras, we have meridians, we have all these different languages to talk about how our emotions are inherently and fundamentally tied to our body. And yet so few people are talking about this in everyday society as if it's some, voodoo nonsense. It's reality, and it's only a disservice to those people who are preventing their own healing from preventing looking in that place in the first place. So to correct me if I'm incorrect, are you only working from the emotion side, or do you also do like physical body work as well to kind of attack at both angles when you're working with people? Like, are you doing any sort of medicinal massage as well, or do you refer people to those kinds of practitioners to kind of go at an occurrence of ailment in the at both angles?
I refer people to body workers, and then I do include touch with consent in the work that I do. And sometimes that touch is holding. Sometimes that touch is someone pushing into me and screaming in my face and growling. Sometimes that touch is grounding touch. So I'll just you cannot even put words to it because it feels insane. Actually, I did it to my best friend the other day, and she was like, "It's bananas when you do that thing because I can't even tell when you pick your hands up. Like, I think your hands are still there and they're not, and it's nuts." Yeah. But it's this grounding touch that I do to different points of the body. And then one of my favorite modalities that's fantastic, that's great for veterans, for men or humans that still don't feel comfortable talking about things or don't want to tell stories or possibly be re-traumatized, is something that causes the body to involuntarily tremor, and it releases stress, trauma, and tension from the nervous system in the body that allows it to downregulate and come back into homeostasis. And it was honestly one of the most healing things that I experienced. And I immediately was like, we're adding that to the belt.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite. That is one of my favorite body things. So I'm using the body in all of this. This is not just like sit on my couch and cry. This is, we incorporate the body in everything that we do. And we're also looking at the mind. We're looking at the identities. We're looking at concepts. We're looking at constructs. We're looking at how we are imprisoning ourselves or perpetuating our own suffering. We're looking at how we relate to ourselves and others. It's all of it. It's mind, body, soul. And that's the only way that I would have it personally.
That's awesome. Yeah. That I love to hear that answer, because then you are kind of attacking at both angles or approaching things at both angles. I love central nervous system resets. To me, they're so much fun. And I've also experienced a lot of healing benefits from it. I've had like super major ones where, like you said, the whole body is convulsing, or I've also had like more minor ones where you just feel the light wave of purging going on. It's a very interesting experience, of course, to be taken under great to be practiced with great care, of course, with a trusted professional only. But to back up a little bit, you were talking about the different wounds, right? We said the mother wound, the father wound, and the other one that was lumped in with that category was the witch wound. Is that the wounding of someone's soul in connection to kind of the ethereal realm, the spirit realm, and the kind of metaphysical side of reality and themselves? Or am I incorrect?
The witch wound is just fear of persecution for standing up for what you believe in and for being who you are.
Okay, something else entirely, but huge. You want to expand on that? Is that a common thing that we see?
I see it a lot in entrepreneurs who are afraid of putting their work out there. Or honestly, I can give you a personal example. Okay. I'm so glad that you were speaking to this. I was just like, louder for the people in the back. Can I actually call up someone and let them hear you say this, because they might respect it hearing it come from a man. Yeah. I have lost friends. I have lost one of my best friends over the belief that there are emotional causes to, like, emotional influences to physical disease. Yeah. I actually had someone call me unethical because I was talking about grounding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is like any of the stuff that is like considered woo, like chakras, Reiki. I took a step back from it for a while, because I was like, nope, if it's not completely scientific and factual and like I can show stacks of peer-reviewed medical review work, then I'm not gonna use it in my work. That was my witch wound showing.
God.
It's because I legitimately have lost one of my best friends in the world because of the things that I believe.
Is it things that you believe, or is it things that you damn well know?
It's things that I damn well know. I know these things to be true. And like arguing with me about it is like, okay, like here, I can give you so many books written by doctors, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting example that you give, because I think it's a very universally applicable thing that we see being healed right now. For the longest time, the healing practitioners have been ostracized and cast away, but public sentiment, now that trust has been overtly broken, finally, for many people who have still been held in trust in the mainstream medical establishments after they've overplayed their hand and their big joke a couple of years ago, people are coming to now realize how much of a scam all the peer-reviewed studies are, all of the this, all of the that are. Now, that said, of course, there are wonderful studies out there. There are wonderful scientists, but then there are the ones that are completely bought and paid for in articles that mean nothing at all because they're just saying what they were hired to say. And people are realizing that. We have people breaking out of this kind of nerd worship, science doctor worship, show me the study attitude, and coming to understand that there is more to life than is in a piece of paper somewhere. And so we see this wonderful shift happening where people like yourself are really starting to stand on their authentic ground and speak their authentic truth. And we're seeing the world heal for it, right? We need more of that. Why should we be afraid because some people still have to see a piece of paper to have an approved thought in their head, right? There's, it's always a shame when we do lose friends, of course, but, people will sort themselves out. When we are as authentic as we can be, people will sort themselves out in where they're meant to be in relation to us. It's the way I look at it. But yeah, call up whoever you want to call up. I'll talk to them, because I'm not just saying that for my own sake. I'm saying that with the backing of a 50-year-old organization who's been helping people in the field, tens of thousands of people for almost half a century now, with these exact things. And not only are we helping people with these exact things, but we do have some science and studies to show these things. Like I said, the good studies do exist to show the other side of the equation as well, not just those that have vested benefit for pharmaceutical industries and surgeons, et cetera. But that's a whole thing. Yeah, if you have any more thoughts on that, feel free to.
I just, Dr. Gabor Mate is just like a light shining in the dark in my mind, moving this work forward. And I'm so grateful for him and for the studies that he publishes in his books. And if you are not hip to Dr. Gabor Mate, please go look up anything that he's written. And I really, really, really love When the Body Says No.
Love it. From that last phrase itself, I could tell I'll probably like what he's saying, because yeah, sometimes when we don't know better, the body will give us the answer in the form of a quick little symptom, and we could ignore that, and then it'll come in the form of a more kind of red flag, then it'll come in the form of a screaming lights and sirens until we finally have to listen to our body because we have no other choice. It's trying to communicate with us. It's meant to. Unfortunately, we have not been trained to listen a lot of the time.
No, we haven't been trained to listen, and we haven't been trained to speak back to it.
What does that mean?
The body speaks in 3 ways: breath, sound, and movement. So the way that we can communicate back to the body, because, well, the body speaks to us through sensation, right? We feel sensations in our body, and that's how our body's communicating to us. The way that we can communicate back to the body to give it what it needs, outside of like your common, food, rest, things like that, sunlight, breath, sound, movement. Breath, sound, and movement. And that's also the way that you can, those are the three ways that you can move stuck energy: breath, sound, and movement. So whenever there's a pain here, I'll send my attention and my breath to it. And then I'll just sit with it and be like, okay, what is this? Or just like, hi, hello. I'm not trying to change you. I'm just like giving you so much presence right now. And I'll just sit and be with it. And then sometimes it needs to make a sound. Sometimes that sound is weird. So I'll make a weird sound. And I'll sit and I'll just, and sometimes that's all it needs. And I will usually have some kind of like amazing epiphany by the time I'm done. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what this is. This is this. And I can go clean it up now.
Yeah.
I know exactly what this is. Right.
Yeah. Well, anyone that has dove into, metaphysics and very interesting science behind vibration and frequency and sound wouldn't find it very difficult to comprehend that at all, right? Physical pain has, in a certain cell and in a certain organ, in a certain part of our body, has a certain frequency. So perhaps through these weird sounds, like you call it, we're offering the frequency of correction to that area, that frequency of healing. And as you kind of made different ones, you're calibrating and kind of honing in on what is needed to heal whatever's going on in that moment. And through writing that kind of askew area of the body, the trapped energy, the trapped thought, the trapped emotion, the trapped experience then gets to flow through into your consciousness so you can experience it and so you can do whatever you need to do and learn the lessons from it. So makes sense to me.
Said it perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back a couple steps here, you talked about victimhood and how that's something that you kind of fell into as a mentality for a while. Do you think that's a natural mentality to feel, or is that strictly learned from observing people having that mentality and through reinforcement from others of that mentality?
That's tough. I can say personally, I definitely learned it. I don't know that I can say that it's a learned thing for everyone. I feel more inclined to say that it's a learned and reinforced behavior. And I also wouldn't be surprised if there were certain systems who were more prone to that. But as far as me and my personal experience, definitely learned.
Interesting. And then another thing that we said at the beginning, just to circle back on a couple of these interesting points, you mentioned it was heal or die in your circumstance. Is that everyone's circumstance, or is there this kind of amalgamated third option where you just kind of exist?
There's definitely that. And I mean, we all die, but for me, it was heal or die sooner, right?
Yeah.
So healing's not going to get you exempt from death, but I at least get to eliminate some of the ways that I will die, right? There's definitely the option where you just exist. And like, what a bummer.
Is that where most people are?
Absolutely. And I just like, when I go out in public and I see people just like on autopilot, I just want to like shake them and be like, wake up. Like, do you see the beautiful sun coming through the beautiful trees? Do you see how green it is here? Like, do you see how many opportunities you have? Do you see what a beautiful human you are? And like how much like there's like 8 billion cells inside of your body that are trillion, like so many functions and cells that are alive and functioning inside of your body for this moment to exist in your consciousness, and you're just completely unaware.
Do you think that there'll always be a majority of people stuck in that state?
God, I hope not. I hope not. And I also, I can't put a cape on. I'm not Captain Save-A-Ho, but I hope that I can inspire other people to live with joy, but it's the heart. This has to be open, and this has to be on, right? We have to have awareness. And I think most people are so busy trying to pretend that like mucky stuff in here doesn't exist, so that they don't have to feel it, that they're just on autopilot. And I do believe that you have to deal with a certain amount of shit before you can get to a certain level of fulfillment. You have to face some dark things within yourself, and you have to do some soul searching, and you have to feel some tough things to get to the place where joy is maybe your base state. And even then, joy isn't like going to be your base state all of the time, because life happens. Like joy is one of my base states. Like that, I am a joyful human, and it's weird to a lot of people, and I'm fine with that. And joy is triggering to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And joy is not my base state all the time. Like I just lost a family member. I spent my birthday in urgent care because I snapped a fingernail in half. It was awful. My assistant flew from halfway around the world to spend 2 weeks with me. She was sick the first week. I broke my fingernail, and then I had the stomach bug for 3 days. So there was a lot of us just sitting like, okay, what are we, okay, what am I unwilling to digest right now? Okay, what, heartburn. Okay, what am I fearing right now? There's just times that shit happens, and you're not going to be joyful all of the time. But when you have the capacity to sit with who you are and know yourself, then you can get to where you have the capacity for joy and fulfillment and connection. But we're just stuck on a hamster wheel.
Absolutely. But we don't have to be. It's up to us to take our lives into our own hands, to find the resources that we need to find, to seek them out, because there are more plentiful than ever, such as the work that you do and offer to the world. And so can you expand on how it is exactly that you do offer the work that you do to the world? Where can people find you? Do you work with people virtually? Do they have to be in person with you? How is it exactly that you're helping people?
In person, I do work with people. I'm in the Nashville area. I have women's circles, and we have a really thriving community called the Nashville Conscious Community on Facebook. If you're in the Nashville area, if you're in Middle Tennessee, you're welcome to join that, because we have about 1,400 people and a slew of events that are organized and hosted, and it's just the most beautiful community. And there's events for everyone. And then as far as my personal work, I work with people all over the world. I do it virtually. I lead retreats all over the world. I co-facilitate and support other people in leading retreats around the world. I have one in March to Peru next year, if anyone is interested in hiking the Andes with me. And then I have one-on-one work. I do a mix of virtual and in person. Some people will fly in for work or fly me out for work. And then I have several different programs that are coming up soon. And then I have several free resources on my website. I have a journal for healing the mother wound, and the mother wound is feeling like you're too much. Father wound is feeling like you're not good enough. That one is coming soon for the month of Father's Day. Yeah, lots of free resources on my website, www.easywonderfullife.com. I want to make this work accessible. And so there are lots of different ways that I work with people that you can join in, take my hand, come into my world, and learn to love yourself deeper.
If someone's not quite ready to take someone along with them on their healing journey or go to a guide or work with someone, is there any actionables that you'd say are universally applicable to someone that would like to get their healing show on the road?
Yeah. I would say just being aware of your thoughts, and whenever there is self-judgment, insert it with compassionate curiosity. So instead of, oh, I'm such a screw up, oh, interesting, I feel like I really screwed that up. Did I actually screw it up? Is that a projection? Could I have done that better? Okay, so here's how we're going to do this better moving forward. And I'm a human, which means that I'm going to screw up sometimes, and I still love myself. Moving on. So
Absolutely.
compassionate curiosity as opposed to self-judgment. Spending 5-10 minutes a day regulating your nervous system. I have a book on Amazon. It's $22. If you don't want to pay someone to do this with you, there's a book on Amazon. It is called the Deep Self-Exploration Tracking Journal. It will walk you through 1 month of starting to build awareness around your thoughts, your physical body, your sensations, and your emotions. It's also going to track the very tangible things that you can do to support yourself, such as sleep, water, food, and it also has a guide to walk you through building your own nervous system regulation practices and then creating a menu based on the type of day you're having. If it's a really busy day, if it's a slow day, if it's like an average day, so that you have a menu created to pull from so that you're never stuck in analysis paralysis, or like, if you're like me and a little neurospicy, like, oh God, I have time. What do I do? And then by the time you figured out what to do and what order you're going to do it in, the time's gone. So I wrote it for people like me, or people who just want to have a menu that they can choose from to help people. It's a great intro into nervous system regulation, into cultivating awareness of thoughts, of physical sensation, and of emotional experience.
Amazing. There's so many new things I keep learning about what you're up to and what you're offering the world. It's really amazing. Meridyth, I really do appreciate the perspective that you brought to the show today. I really do appreciate a lot of the language that you use to describe these things that get talked about so often, but perhaps get talked about unconsciously too often. I thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. And my final question for you is, if someone got hit on the head, forgot the rest of this conversation up until right now, what would you really like them to leave off with and remember?
You absolutely can heal, and you deserve it. You are worthy of it. You are worthy of a life that feels really good to you, and it's possible. So go create it.
Love it. Meridyth, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.